The night and an island disappeared. Atlantis. In the last hours of a dying day, there was an island. White stone temples glistened above a dark, restless sea. Bronze bells rang from tall towers. Torches burned along endless harbors, where ships lay in the water like sleeping animals, tied to their ropes, heavy and silent. The people of this island believed, as many people who live on islands still do today, that they would exist forever. They carved their pride into the mountains. They erected statues of themselves, larger than their own gods, and had images made in their likeness. They told their children that the world had a center, and that this center was right here. But on that night, the sea began to move, not like a gentle tide, not like the deep, slow breathing of the ocean, but like something awakening from a very old sleep. The sea receded as if it needed to gather new strength. It returned with unimaginable force and magnitude. Waves grew teeth. The wind found a voice. The first cracks in the tipple floors were so fine that no one noticed them. A hairline crack under the bare foot of a priest. A tiny piece of plaster that fell silently from a painted ceiling into a bowl of holy oil. When they finally looked up, it was already too late. The floor reared up like a wounded animal. Columns broke with a sound like bones snapping. Marble figures of kings and conquerors slid into the boiling blackness of the sea, their stone eyes still staring at a sky that had long since ceased to respond. And then, as a philosopher wrote centuries later, in a single day and a single night of misfortune, the island disappeared. It was there, and then it was no longer there. What remained was an empty line on the horizon. And a story. A story about one of the unsolved mysteries of today. About an island. About Atlantis. Join Wonderworld on a fantastic journey and be curious to find out what has been found under the eternal ice of Antarctica. We know this story because of one man. His name was Plato. About 2,300 years ago, in the city of Athens, Plato wrote of a powerful island beyond the known world. He called it Atlantis. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, he tells of a great empire, rich in metals and fertile soil, ruled by kings who initially ruled justly and moderately, but over time, they became greedier. They wanted more land, more power, more admiration. They attacked other peoples, expanded their empire, and confused wealth with immortality. And so, according to Plato's story, the gods intervened, not with a slow decline, not with a quiet bleeding out of history, no, but with a single, brutal moment. The earth shook, the sea rose, and Atlantis, Plato writes, sank into the floods and disappeared. What remains is the memory and a great myth about Atlantis. Most historians today believe Plato wanted to tell a warning story, a parable about hubris, corruption, and the fall of great countries. No other ancient author provides us with an independent, clear account of this island. And yet, for centuries and millennia, people have read Plato's words and heard more than just a moral in them. They heard an echo, a whisper of something lost, perhaps a memory of a world before our world, of a civilization that stood at the edge of the known map and was then wiped out. If Atlantis ever existed, where could it have been? Many imagine warm waters, ruins resting on the seabed, overgrown with coral and silence. But there is another, colder possibility, one that is not bathed in blue, but in white. What if Atlantis did not drown in the sea, but is hidden under ice? To explore this question, we must leave Plato's sunny Mediterranean and travel to the coldest place on our planet, to the end of the world, to Antarctica, the white void at the end of the world. At the very bottom of our maps lies a continent that almost no one will ever see with their own eyes: Antarctica. From a distance, it seems simple, a white shape at the edge of the world, an empty patch of snow and cold. But beneath this white skin of ice lies no flat, smooth ground. Beneath the ice lies a trapped land. There are mountains that would tower higher than our tallest skyscrapers, deeper than many ocean floors. Petrified forests, now just dark shadows in the rock, where millions of years ago, trees rustled in the wind under a sun that is warmer than today. In some areas, the ice above is more than 3 kilometers thick. If a city had ever stood here, if walls, streets, and statues had touched the open sky, the pressure of time and ice would have long since pressed them into a silent nothingness. Researchers drill deep into this ice and pull out long, clear columns, ice cores. Each fine ring in them represents a winter, a year, a piece of Earth's history. In these cores, they read the breaths of the planet over hundreds of thousands of years. They find traces of ancient climate fluctuations, of times when Antarctica was milder, when perhaps forests grew, rivers flowed, rain fell instead of snow. But they find nothing that looks like us. No tools, no walls, no traces of cities. The ice remembers temperatures, storms, air, but humans, it does not remember them. At least, not in a way that we could recognize. And yet, anyone who stands out there in a long polar night, far from any city, far from any light, and hears only the cracking of the ice, the soft sighing slide of the glaciers, can well imagine that beneath all that white, something else is sleeping. Something older than any of our stories. Some people look at this hidden continent and whisper a heretical idea. What if the story of Atlantis actually belongs here. Their idea is simple, and that's precisely why it's so seductive. They say, long ago, Antarctica was not frozen. The continent was different. The sky was warmer. Perhaps there were forests, rivers, coasts teeming with life. If people lived here back then, if they built cities, if they believed that their empire would last forever, then the cold came. The climate changed. Glaciers grew. The sea rose, froze, retreated, returned. And everything they had built not only sank beneath the water, it was buried by thousands of years of snow and ice. Until today. It is a thought that seems to connect Plato and modern science with each other. A single, elegant answer. Atlantis was real, and it lies beneath the ice. But the numbers speak against it. Most of the Antarctic ice sheet is much older than our civilization. Long before the first cities were built in Mesopotamia, long before pyramids were built in Egypt, long before humans knew the word history, the ice began to accumulate here. If there had once been a human culture in Antarctica that disappeared under this ice, then it would be older than anything we knew about ourselves. Older than our oldest bones, older than our first marks in stone. Our science says that's hard to imagine. And yet this idea dies not. But what if it did? It survives in conspiracy books, in forums, in long nights in research stations, where someone steps up to the dark window, listens down, and believes they hear a distant rumbling deep below them, which does not come only from the icebergs. Perhaps not a city, but something that moves. The earth itself. When we step back from the cold into our sacred texts, we find memories of doom all over the world. In the Old Testament, the water rises until only an ark floats on an endless gray expanse. A family, a few animals, a last attempt. In the Quran, Nuh warns his people as clouds gather like dark thoughts. Those who refuse to listen are swallowed by the water. In ancient Mesopotamian tales, kings tell of cities that were plunged into floods by gods, of walls that disappear beneath muddy waves. In Christianity, the flood becomes a metaphor, divine judgment, purification, a new leaf, wet with rain. In Hinduism, ages roll into one another. Golden and dark ages alternate. Worlds arise and pass away in vast cycles. At the end of an age, fire may come, or water, and everything that seemed secure is washed away. The same pattern appears again and again. There was a world. It became too proud, too cruel, or it had simply come to the end of its time. Then the water comes. Rivers burst their banks. Seas rise. The sky itself seems to fall. Perhaps these stories are just images, explanations for real floods at the end of ice ages, for villages on coasts that disappeared into the rising sea. But perhaps they are our own human Atlantis. A premonition that nothing we build will truly remain. Plato tells this warning in the form of an island. Religions tell it as divine decision, as a curse, as judgment. Underneath it all lies the same cold message. Everything you know can disappear in a single night, in a single day. No gods, no predictions are needed for this. Humans can do it by human hands. So now we stand between legend and measurement. In one hand, we hold Plato's Atlantis, a sunken empire, perhaps never real, perhaps buried under eternal ice, but incredibly alive in our minds. In the other hand, we hold data, ice cores, satellite images, radar images that show us what the ground beneath Antarctica looks like. Or, based on our current knowledge, we interpret how we think it should look. They show us no temples, no statues, no ruins. They show us mountains and valleys, old riverbeds, scars on a planet that has been changing its face for millions of years. If Atlantis ever existed, then it is highly unlikely that it is here. And yet, a feeling remains. If you imagine standing on an Antarctic night under a heavy black sky with nothing but the wind in your ears and the soft rumbling of the ice beneath your feet, then you begin to sense something. We are very young. Our stories, our religions, our empires, they are a thin layer on an ancient world. Beneath our myths, the earth has its own memories, not written in books, but in stone, in water, and in ice. Imagine you are lying right there. Far below you, black rock, sleeping mountains, the dry beds of rivers that have not flowed for millions of years. Above you, miles of snow and frozen time, each layer a past winter that no one knows by name anymore. Far away from you, cities glow with electric light. Far away from you, people talk of advancement and progress. But here, under the ice, everything moves slowly. So slowly that an entire human life is but the shadow of a blink of an eye. If there was ever a city before our cities, a civilization before our word civilization, then perhaps the earth gently folded it up and laid it between these layers, like a forgotten letter in an old book made of snow. Perhaps we will never know whether Atlantis was a real place or just a mirror that Plato held up to us. But we do know this: worlds come and go, seas rise and fall, ice grows and crumbles, and somewhere deep beneath the white silence, the planet continues to turn, slowly, indifferently, asleep. The ice breathes. The earth dreams. And you can let go now. Glide down into a calmer depth as if you yourself were coming to rest beneath this ancient ice. Your journey with Wonderworld ends here, far away from noise, from light, from time. Just you, the darkness, and a story that continues to dream as you fall asleep. Join Wonderworld on one of its next spectacular journeys and stay tuned. Pull your blanket up a little higher and relax.